Welcome back to the AI Operator Podcast. I'm Jordan, and today we are sitting down with Asim Amin, the CEO and co-founder of Plumm, basically a mental health and well-being platform that's ultimately transforming how companies support their employees. Now, Asim's journey is remarkable. He's born in India, raised in Dubai, and now he's building companies in the UK. He's lived at really the intersection of multiple cultures and challenges. And along the way, he's navigated personal struggles, entrepreneurial risks, and relentless rejection, all of which shaped his mission to make mental health universally accessible. Now, today, Plumm delivers thousands of therapy sessions every single month and is building the future of workplace well-being. We're going to explore the story behind Plumm, the lessons of Asim's own life, and the vision that he is chasing. So let's go ahead and get into it. Welcome to the show, brother. How are you doing?
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Jordan. And I must say, this is perhaps one of the best intros I've ever heard about me and Plumm. So thank you so much for that again.
Of course. Hey, it's you make it easy. You have quite an incredible background. I was just doing some research previous to this conversation that we're about to have, and I'm I'll just say I've been traveling. I'd mentioned that briefly, about 2 years, all over Central and South America, Europe, Asia. And I have been blessed to be able to experience different cultures and see so many incredible things along the way. So anytime I hear about, someone's background like that, right, born in India, moved to Dubai, in UK now, I can see a lot of the challenges that may arise and how, you've been able to overcome those. So I'm really excited to dive into those and talk a little bit about that. While we're on that though, how has navigating those cultural transitions shaped your perspective on belonging? Like, how does that show up in the culture that you're actually building at Plumm?
I think I think the sense of identity, like the whole confusion around identity more than anything else. I mean, born in India, but then lived all my life in Dubai. And I don't know if you know, but I mean, you could be living in Dubai all your life, but you never become Emirati. I mean, you're always an expat, and you're renewing your visa every couple of years and so on. I mean, when I was little, obviously you don't have the comprehension and you don't think about all those things. But as you start growing up, you just start seeing people around you, and especially me looking at my mom and dad, and I'm like, oh shit, like they're living here all their lives, but they're still Indians. And then every single time I went back to India, somehow, I did not connect, or I did not resonate with the environment, simply because I was not from that environment. And then when I go back to Dubai, I'm not Emirati. So I'm just like, oh shit, like, who am I? Yes, I have this passport which says I'm Indian, but it's just that, it's a huge confusion of identity. Like, I want to be Emirati, but I'm not. I don't resonate being an Indian. And I think from the get-go, what I wanted to do in Plumm as well is, but I do see the power of, learning from different cultures. I absolutely envy you, Jordan. You've been traveling 2 years across the globe. I hope the expectation versus reality, what social media says, isn't too far off, because there must be. I mean, it's immense knowledge and experience you can gain from speaking to people across multicultural. So huge value from that perspective. I grew up with a lot of Arabs. I grew up with a lot of English people, obviously Indians as well. So just learning from that. And Dubai is such a big melting pot. I mean, it's similar to London where I am now. So learning from, different cultures and different religions, I think that's just beautiful. And we've done something very similar in Plumm from the get-go. So, I mean, I think it also started off because I really had no money. I was bootstrapping. And, it is what it is. Salary arbitrage is what I thought, okay, I should be doing from the really beginning. So I started hiring from people outside of Dubai, to save on costs. And that just became just a model, not only for our internal team, but we also have external providers, therapists and coaches. I mean, that also now became our USP, because we are able to cater to individuals. Like, I mean, you could be, a French person living in London, but you have the ability now to connect with a therapist or coach who's living in France, who speaks your cultural, who understands your cultural background, speaks your language, and so on. So I think that's just been inculcated within the culture within. And I think it's immensely valuable. It's been immensely valuable learning from other people. I mean, going on holiday, traveling is one thing, but then working with people from different cultures and different religions and so on, I think that's just like a different layer of experience that you gain, and definitely it helps us, obviously from a business perspective, but just our individual growth. I think that's just been, it's been amazing so far.
I love that. I definitely want to dig into the mental health aspect of this, and what had you, I believe it was your mother, but I'm gonna let you tell us that story. That kind of got you on the mental health path, because I've been in it's an interesting experience for me. I've been in kind of entrepreneurship and this hustle culture for quite a while, and what I've found is the harder you push, the more successful you don't become, necessarily. Like there's not a true correlation a lot of times between this. I'm just going to run through walls method that a lot of people teach online. And not only a lot of times do people not get to where they want to be through that, but it also creates a lot of mental health challenges, I believe.
Right.
And a lot of strain on relationships, especially in a workplace. So I want to talk about that, but before we do, I want to talk about early entrepreneurship. So I believe at like 17 years old, you had convinced your uncle to invest in your first business. Um, can you share a little bit about what that first business was, how you got into entrepreneurship at such a young age, and were you just born with that drive, or what was that? And then looking back, what did that experience teach you about resilience, and how did it shape your actual approach to risk now as you're running Plumm?
Yeah. So I don't think I was born into that. I mean, my mom and dad are not. Well, my dad was and is entrepreneurial, but he's never had a single successful business. So maybe not the right person to emulate. And my mom, I mean, like zero risk. I mean, that's how she's always lived her life. So I don't think I was born into that, but maybe what I was born into was not having enough, and that not having enough, or that sense of scarcity every single day, day in, day out. And me living in Dubai, and I grew up with all my friends were like really wealthy people as well. So that scarcity, just was so much in my face. Like, oh my God, shit, I'm so poor. So I
Yeah.
had to do something about it, but I just didn't know how, and I was too young, and I also wasn't good at school, so I dropped out of high school so pretty early on, and I started playing video games, and then online games back then, Counter Strike, and this is way back when. So we used to play games on local area network, LAN games, and now everything's just moved online. But so day in, day out, that's all I did, and then I started mapping, people, and I, if you do anything, for a long period of time, you kind of get good at it. So I was really good at playing games, and there was these mini competitions where I used to win, money here and there, or free hours that I could just continue to play, or they would give me food or whatever. So that became somehow my initial income stream, and then I just saw like I saw how these network cafes or gaming cafes were using me to bring other people in, because I was so good that I was drawing a lot of attention, and then hosting competitions and so on, whatever. So I was good for business. And then I'm like, I've seen my dad, try and do so many businesses, but he's always failed. But maybe I can do a little bit better. Perhaps I'm a little bit smarter than him or whatever. But I don't have money. My uncle happens to be the complete opposite. He is a really successful entrepreneur. And so he became my first investor. I made this whole pitch deck. I run like a financial model, however it was. And I convinced him to come in as a 50% equity partner. And to my surprise, he did. I was like, shit, this is like the best day on earth because now I can play games all my life and I can potentially earn money. And yeah, it was quite successful. And that really, but it was quite successful for a while. And like I said, I dropped out. And the dropout happened during that time because I was so successful. I was like, why do I need to go to school? And I can just do this for the rest of my life. And which obviously my mom was completely against. And then she spoke to my uncle. They did like a coup and they said, okay, like this madness needs to stop. And that was my first exit, like a forced exit. So I had to just come out of it. And then I think that was also my first taste to perhaps now when I reflect back, my first taste to depression. Because I was like, oh shit, like my whole world is just collapsed, like right in front of my eyes, and I had no control over it. It was just bad. Then I had to get a job. I never went back to school, so they didn't win that war. It was just bad. And then after that, I tried. I mean, I got a job, and then I got another job, but this entrepreneurial type of, I don't know, bug was constantly, I don't know, constantly pushing me into like, I have to do something of myself. And then I think so I actually got a really good job with a semi-government developer in Dubai. They built all the islands, the Palm Island and all that. So it was a fantastic job. Because it was so good and I was making a lot of money. And then I started doing a little bit of investments back in the days. People, even today, I think people make a lot of money in Dubai buying, selling properties. So I started doing that. And then off the back of that, I started getting into different businesses. I had a restaurant chain for some time. I bought that and I sold that. Then I had a digital marketing agency. Then I had a dry cleaners. So, I mean, a lot of bits and bobs. So, I mean, that because of that first taste of success that I got at the age of 17, but also because I felt I had no control over my destiny. I think maybe that bug just remained that, when I grow older and when I have that control, I will do this again. And then since then, I've just continued to do that. I think my last straw was when I was working for this company and I had all these side gigs on the side, this business and that business, buying and selling. And then I got laid off. And when I got laid off, again, I felt like, oh my God, like I have no control of my destiny. And I said, okay, I'm never getting a job again. The rest is history.
What an incredible story. And that early success is always interesting. I've quite a few friends that, very, very similar, entrepreneurs since they were 16 and millionaires by 17 and, lost it all and got it all back. And they've had, 15 companies before, they turned 30. Now that leads me to something that is somewhat unrelated, and kind of off the beaten path of what we would normally talk about on a podcast like this, but I do think it's really interesting to me, which is this concept of like seekers versus everyone else. And it's a question I personally have struggled with my whole life because I have a lot of people that come to me for advice. How can I, get a better job? How can I, do start a business, whatever it may be. And they come to me and, I've had some level of success, but like, I don't really even look at myself as that successful, and like, I've just bumbled my way through life and done some cool stuff along the way, and I still don't know what I'm doing 99% of the time. I don't think any of us really do. But the one thing that has always been core to my life is I've always known there was more for me. I've always known that there was another level I could reach, or there was better, regardless of the situation that I was in. And I've noticed that some people innately just seem to have a lower level of like that feeling, or I don't know what it is necessarily. Maybe it's a higher tolerance to things that they don't like. And maybe I have a lower tolerance to situations that I don't find myself liking. But what is your experience with that? Of kind of the idea of like, so you have seekers and then other people, and can people who aren't born with that natural like feeling of like, I got to do more, there is more, and like I just got to keep moving. Um, can people gain that over time? Like, what is your thought on that?
I think everyone wants more, but not everyone wants more. I don't know if that
Mm,
made sense, because I mean, I don't think there's a single person who's going to say, "Oh, I don't want more money. I don't want more success. I don't want more happiness. I don't want more contentment. I don't want more whatever."
yeah,
Because I believe human beings, like all of us, we're not just here just to survive, but to thrive. I mean, growth is important in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't only has to be how many zeros you're adding to your bank account. I mean, growth in general. But the reality is, I don't think most people really want it, because I think innately human beings are also lazy. I
yeah,
think your brain just has one function, and that is to keep you alive, and which is don't
yeah,
move. Just sit on the
yeah,
couch. Just don't move. Just eat as much as you can, gain as much fat so it protects you, and then
yeah.
just don't move. I think that's what it is. So
Mm,
we have all these ideas or infatuations of how our life should be, but the
yeah,
reality is all those ideas don't matter. They're worthless. I mean, everything boils down to execution. We all have the same amount of time. We all got 24 hours in a day. And really, more or less, only 12 productive hours, because you have to sleep, you have to eat, you have to shit, you have to shower, you have to God knows what. So within that 12 hours, it's really what you do within those 12 hours changes everything. Um, I mean, Jordan, what you chose to do within your 12 hours versus what I chose to do, really, your input is completely correlated to your output.
yeah,
So I mean, you reached out. We're doing this pod. You could have been scrolling on your Instagram now, but you're here,
yeah.
and I'm here. So I think if you really want it as bad as you want to breathe air, you'll do something about it. So
Mm,
for me, I was in a really, really dark place, Jordan, a couple of years ago. I had suicidal thoughts. We can get into that, but I had suicidal thoughts, and when I came out of that headspace, I didn't want to survive anymore. I really didn't want to get back into that headspace. I really wanted to thrive, because that was a very horrible situation. And maybe sometimes, people have to get into that headspace. I don't know. God forbid. I don't think anybody should get into that kind of headspace. But I mean, maybe adversity, either
yeah,
brings you down, or propels you into different proportions. So for me, I just wanted to, like, I mean, for me coming to the UK, I had an Indian passport. Like I can't enter this country. I couldn't open a bank account. I was on visa going back and forth. I didn't have money, but I just wanted it as bad as I wanted to breathe air. So I did whatever it took.
yeah.
I strongly believe you only fail if you stop. I told myself, I'm going to do this or I'm going to die trying. There's nothing in between. And there was no plan B. And I think that is also a very bad concept human beings have, where, if this doesn't work out, I'm going to do something else. It doesn't work out, I'm going to do something else. I mean, you only have, like I said, 12 hours or this much energy. If you're
Yeah.
even taking out 1% of that to something else, your plan B, or what if it doesn't work out? Okay, you're taking it away from this main goal that you
Mm,
need to complete. So for me, it's like, yeah, I think everybody wants it, but you don't really want it. Because if you did as much as you wanted to breathe air,
yeah.
you would do it.
Yeah. I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more. And that's where I think, that threshold of like tolerance, I do think people have like slightly less or more greater tolerance, but to your point, I mean, some people have to go deep into the hole, to climb out. And I personally have been there quite a few times. A lot of my listeners, I don't share this hardly ever, but I've been a multiple time drug addict. Where I had to climb my way out of the abyss. And it was not easy. It was very very difficult. I don't talk about it much, but to your point, I mean, I was like, I never want to go back to that. One of my favorite quotes is, never go back to something you had to pray your way out of, right?
Yeah.
Um, and that one's always inspired me, because there are moments of weakness, or one moments of temptation where, things creep back in. But like you said, I just am not willing to go back to that. And, yeah, it powered a lot of decisions in my life. Now you've been very open about hitting, that low point, personally in your life, and how that kind of moment of struggle became the seed for Plumm. Can you share what you're willing to share about kind of that situation and how you turned it into such a positive, incredible outcome? Because that in itself is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you spoke about my mom just before, when we first started. So definitely, my mother was, I mean, the starting catalyst, because I came to know about the space because of her. And she had, you know she was depressed. She was in a very, very bad place because my mom and dad separated, and it was just horrible for her. But then I saw how she started changing her life, because she started seeking help. She started getting into therapy, and then she transformed so much that she then decided to become a therapist herself, so that she could
Mm,
impact many, other people, which is just fantastic. But obviously, there's, even today, there's a lot of stigma and taboo around mental health. And this is about 16, 17 years ago. So the stigma was even more so. And so I never shared this information with anyone, especially as guys, like, I mean, we've been
yep.
told, you're a man, so you need to man up, and boys don't cry and all that crap. So I would never tell any of my friends, any of my guy friends, especially, that, my mom's a therapist and whatever. But then, as I mentioned, I was in the property sector, real estate. I invested a lot of money. I lost a lot of money. I was in debt. It was a very, very bad headspace I was in. And yeah, 2016, it was 3 days in a row. I was just like, okay, this is just horrible. Like, I just didn't find a way out. I just didn't know how to come out of that hole. So I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna end it. And I walked to my balcony and I looked down. It just happens to be that I'm also scared of heights. So I'm like, oh shit, this is just too scary. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'm gonna come back tomorrow. And then I go back the next day, and then I started picturing my fall. Am I going to die midway? I'm going to hit something on the way. When I land, how am I going to land? Is my brain going to open up? I'm sorry, disclaimer to people listening, but these were the thoughts. So I was, so I was making the fall very vivid. And again, I think it was because I was just too scared of heights. And then I'm like, oh shit, this is just too scared. Like, I was just shit scared. So I'm like, okay, like, I can't do it today. And then I come back the third day, and the, and then I'm picturing the fall even more vividly this time. I'm like,
Mm,
oh shit, but what if I don't die? Am I gonna live like a cripple for the rest of my life? Like how, like, it's gonna be a shittier situation than I'm in today. So, but I was so debilitated. I was like, oh my God, like, either just jump or do something about it, because I cannot stand on this balcony for a fourth day. And I don't know, maybe I just did not have the guts to take that plunge. But I was like, something needs to change, like, because I cannot be here
mm,
on the fourth day. And that's when I started. I believe I was fortunate as well, because I had my mom's experience. I had something to fall back on, maybe. So I'm like, okay, this is not working. So let me try something else. So I started, getting into therapy, started taking care of my own mental health. And when I came out of that headspace, Jordan, I started speaking to a lot of people around me. And again, mostly guys, my friends, my peers, whatever. And the talk about stress and anxiety day to day was just so very normal. Like, I think we've also normalized, the conversation around, how stressed we are and how anxious we are, whatever. Because if somebody asked me that question those 3 days, how I was doing, I would just tell them, yeah, I'm okay. I would just tell
yeah.
them, yeah, I'm just stressed, financial, whatever. I would never tell them I'm standing in a balcony and thinking of taking my life. Never. So I was just like, oh shit, like, I'm speaking to all these guys and, like, close friends of mine. I'm like, what if this guy is also maybe, thinking or contemplating suicide? Like, shit, that's just horrible. And then when you start looking at the stats, I mean, it's quite alarming that, suicide rates are only increasing every single year. And obviously, most of them are men. And now, what is quite alarming, most of them are younger people. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, suicide is killing more people than COVID ever did. And
Yeah.
how the world just changed and everybody just ran because COVID. But I mean, suicide is getting more people. Like, it's just crazy. So I'm like, wow, the pain was so deep that I just felt I just had to do something about it. I just had to. Like, and again, that came from a place where I had to do something about it or I just die trying. And I knew, Dubai for me wasn't the place simply because, again, the taboo, mental health, and all that. There's just that much more in the Middle East and in Asia
Yeah.
compared to the Western world. And then I looked at the startup ecosystem, and then finally, really, I just needed the sense of identity. So yeah, and then started Plumm.
Wow. A couple things stood out to me, and thank you for sharing that. Thank you for using that story to help others. A couple things stood out to me. The simple fact of uh we've really like optimized for the ability to talk about stress, like you said. That was a really good point because, yeah, I mean, you talk with people, oh yeah, I'm just stressed, or oh yeah, I got a lot going on. And that's something I think we've actually come some ways for men to admit that, because I think before we wouldn't even admit that. But you're right. How deep does that stress go? How deep does yeah, it's been a tough week actually go? And how many times in my life have I heard that when someone is actually going through something so much deeper than I can imagine? I think I probably do have a little more empathy. Well, actually, it's funny because it goes both ways. I have a little bit more empathy, but I'm also a little tougher, I think, on some people,
Mm.
because of my own experiences with, how deep I had gone down the rabbit hole, and I had to get myself out. I had virtually had no help getting myself out. And but it was a self-made hole that I put myself in, which usually it is. Usually things don't happen to you, they happen because of decisions that you've made. Um so yeah, I mean, it's such a powerful thing. Now, in the workplace especially, um I think a lot of Western companies, as you mentioned, especially in the US, have done a lot better job at, trying to offer some type of mental health support. But I've always seen it fall very shallow. I worked in kind of the corporate world for a little while in the US, and they always talk about, oh yeah, like, we have mental health stuff for our employees. But it was always very hard to schedule the sessions. It was difficult to find something you mentioned. Like, what if, they're Filipino, and you have a therapist in the US? Like, how does that even, it's so culturally different. It's like dialects, of different languages. Well, like, just because you speak German doesn't mean you speak the same type as German as someone else. I use German because I'm in Germany right now. But with Plumm, how have you? I guess actually a better question would be, what have you seen as the biggest challenge in implementing mental health support inside of the workplace? And then, what have you guys done to overcome that challenge as you guys have grown Plumm inside of the workplace?
That's a very good question, Jordan. I think maybe I think the challenge. How do I phrase this? I think we've gone with the flow, and I'll explain that. Just take a step back. When we first started off, we didn't start off as a workplace mental being solution. We were B2C, going direct to consumer. But then we quickly realized, we're like, oh shit, therapy is actually expensive. People can't afford therapy.
Mm,
That is why it's just easier to have 3 pints and then just drink your stress away, kind of thing.
yeah,
Um, so we're like, okay, we need to shift this cost element to the companies because, for the most of our lives, we're in our offices doing our jobs and whatever. And a lot of stress is also related because of workplace, like your boss or your time management or your salaries or whatever. So work related.
yeah,
So like, obviously it makes sense. So, let's start speaking to the corporate. Uh, and this is pre-COVID. When we spoke to corporates, there was a lot of pushback. They were like, "Yeah, but I mean, does it make sense? I mean, what is in it for me? How does that impact my bottom line?"
yeah,
So we're like, "Oh shit! Like this is difficult," and we're trying to where we were trying to find ways to, prove ROI to them and so on. Then COVID hit. As soon as COVID hit, I mean, that just became a silver lining. And we all know the conversation and the demand for mental health has just changed and exploded. So, I mean, it was very difficult for us to educate the market, but COVID did that job for us.
Wow.
So we went with the flow, meaning we started off B2C. It was not working. We went with the flow and then came to corporate. It wasn't working. We went with the flow because COVID happened. But then, we've forgotten obviously about COVID today. Nobody really talks about it. I know we've spoken about it a couple of times in this conversation, but in general, we human beings also have a very short-term memory. Things are very big, and then after some time, there's another stress that we think about, and then life goes on. 2-3 years ago, since the last 2.5, 3 years, there's cost of living crisis, economic dips across the globe, mass layoff, and all that. And it still continues. I mean, it's interesting we're speaking about AI, but we will be. But AI is also now a big catalyst to that, and so on. So budget cuts. Companies are just now starting to look at mental health services as a good to have and not a must have. So then, the first 6 months when this started happening, I started fighting with all these companies, thinking, like, whoa, you're not going to think twice before you pay for a HubSpot or a Salesforce, but the human beings behind that computer, like, you don't think about their mental health. And, but sometimes you have to lose a few battles to win the war.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're like, okay, shit, we need to move into a place where we become business critical. We cannot just stay like a good to have because, I mean, as much as I would like to say, I also run a business. And if I'm in that place where I only have enough money to pay salaries, the first things that are going to go away are benefits. And it's a fact. Of course, people at Plumm have access to therapy and coaching, but because this is our business. So,
Yep.
so I can appreciate that. And then again, we had to go with the flow. So if you really ask me, does the world, I don't know, does the world really care about mental health? The answer would be yes if people put the money where their mouth is. So there's a lot of talk. There was a lot of talk because COVID happened. And then there's still a lot of talk, but there's no money pumped in. For things to change, you need cash. So if you're just talking and not executing on that talk, it doesn't really matter. So that influx of mental health also came off the back of COVID. So, I mean, I would just think if COVID never happened, maybe the conversation around mental health wouldn't be as it is today.
Yep.
So it's great that you were having this conversation. You spoke about your mental health struggles and I did. I think these conversations are important, but I mean, for the needle to really move, you need to normalize the conversation in the workplace. I think that is super important because as men, women, it's very dynamic. People work every single day. If that element is fixed, because, people talk about work-life balance, but we're one human being. Well, if you've got shit going on at work, you're bringing it home and then your home life is miserable. So if you're able to fix that and if you have a good financial well-being and all that aspect covered, so hopefully you have a more wholesome, better life. So yeah, but things are not how they are seem to be. Like, I mean, everybody's talking about mental health, but yeah, there isn't enough action.
That makes total sense. As far as, not enough action, I like where you said, you got to kind of put your money where your mouth is. It makes me think of like religion almost, the like the principle of tithing, it's like, in the Christian faith, it's like, you have to give to God to, you're basically putting money before God in that situation. I think it's similar, like in this situation of, if you're not willing to invest in, mental health, like, do you actually care, and are other things a priority? Is that HubSpot account, is your marketing budget a priority over, your employees' mental health? Is a really interesting way to look at it. So thank you for sharing that perspective. So you guys started D2C, and then it kind of went B2B. That's a genius entrepreneurial shift on your part as well, because obviously if you can't get the money from the people, getting the money from the organizations is a fantastic shift, not just as a business model for you guys, but more importantly, to be able to serve your clients at the highest level. Because yeah, I mean, therapy, I've actually never done therapy. Like I said, I've kind of just dug myself out of, and luckily I was able to. A lot of people I don't think have the opportunity to do that, which is really, really sad and unfortunate. I have one of my best friends, was like suicide by cops essentially. And it was, you know, terrible looking back on it, and he just couldn't find his way out. And I forget where I was going with that. Oh my gosh. The shift, of the model. And the reason I
Yeah.
hadn't done therapy was, it was so expensive, and back when I needed it most, I had no money. I didn't have health insurance. And it's hardly included in health insurance to my understanding anyways.
Yeah.
And I remember I looked up a few therapy sessions, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's no way I could afford this. It was like $600 a month or something. And I was barely able to make my rent. And I feel like most people struggling with mental health, not most, that's a overgeneralization for sure. But a large portion, you might be able to speak to this better on the actual numbers, but I'm guessing a large portion of these people that are struggling mental health probably don't have the finances to spend $600 a month on you know uh, mental health support. So now let's talk a little bit about the transition that you did, because I want to talk about your organization as well. Make sure you guys get the recognition with Plumm, because you went D2C. It is mental health based, but you guys also do a whole slew of other things. Can you share a little bit about that transition from, kind of mental health to, hey, we are a platform for the workplace, and where Plumm has arrived today?
Yeah. And it's just, continuing the conversation of going with the flow. But in hindsight, I think everything happens for a reason, and it's only for your own good. So yeah, so budget became an issue, and we're like, oh shit, like if we don't do something about it, we're gonna die. And I think any startup, especially you know growing startup, you're either growing or dying. Like there's nothing in between, because the
Yeah.
market is shifting so quickly. Like especially now in this day and age with AI. So we're like, okay, something needs to change, and we need to become business critical. And that's when we said, okay, so obviously the human behavior is also changing. We said, okay, we're going to make everything HR, from payroll to ATS to LMS to core and whatever that may be. But because we also believe that, we started off as a mental health company, and we believe mental health should be a fundamental human right. And when it comes to mental health of your employees, budget should not be a part of the conversation. So we're like, okay, so let's make this platform and then subsidize mental health. So, now you have no excuse to not provide mental health support to your employees.
Yeah.
That was the premise. But then obviously challenges, when we first started, we also thought how difficult it's going to be. 30 days that we're going to rack up a new platform. Obviously that wasn't the case. Year and a half later, finally this year, beginning of this year, we launched our end-to-end proposition. But the challenges really were, because the whole HR suite is so complex, and a lot of companies go through months and months, sometimes even years of onboarding and implementation. It's very difficult. People don't shift from HR platform not because they don't love their HR platforms, it's because they don't hate them enough. Because it's such a pain moving from one platform
Yeah.
to another platform. It is your people's CRM. It's like, again, moving from HubSpot or Salesforce. Like
Yeah.
it's just very, very difficult. So we're like, okay, so the platform cannot be a like to like, as good as your platform. It has to be a far more superior platform, number one. And then number two, like the whole implementation aspect needs to be taken care of. It cannot be weeks or months of implementation. We have to bring that down. So now, fortunately, we've brought it down to a couple of hours implementation. I think we were fortunate because, AI, we spoke about how the conversation around mental health changed about 3 years ago, but the conversation in the tech space also changed about 3 years ago because of OpenAI and ChatGPT and so on. So we were also fortunate that we were able to build. I mean, we had nothing legacy. We were able to build everything from scratch and AI embed in everything that we do. So we were able to scale so much faster and so on. But yeah, so I mean, uh, to come to to bring home the point that the education piece is done around mental health. Everybody understands the importance of mental health, but budget is a conversation. So yeah, that's how we've now positioned ourselves. But just touching on the point that it's like Elon Musk wanted to impact the climate change through cars, like the whole climate change aspect. But yeah, so people care about climate change, but if you're going to give me a shitty car, I'm not going to convert. Like you have to give me a
Yeah.
good car as well. So
Yeah.
so same thing with mental health. I mean, yes, I care about mental health, but if you're going to give me a shitty platform, like I have to make payroll. Like yes,
Yeah.
mental health is important, but people need their salaries every single month. That is somehow maybe more business critical.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think that was the conundrum that we're in, but I think in hindsight, we were just able to build something far more superior, and I think we're all really proud that we were able to subsidize mental health within the whole proposition.
Incredible. Yeah, it's incredible. Um, yeah, those entrepreneurial shifts are so important. Um, for obviously the survival of the company and the mental health of your employees that, need the job and need the paycheck, right? And yeah, there's a lot going on there as you kind of make that transition. One question I have about the mental health and providers, because you've probably had some experience with this. One of my concerns always with mental health, and this is actually just, I come from the US. Medical out there is controversial. We'll just say that. You have big pharma. You have a lot of good. You also have a lot of bad. Like most things in the United States, I think we ride both sides. And when it comes to mental health, when it comes to doctors, I've had some just absolutely horrible experiences with doctors. Especially, I have horrible ADHD. I've never taken medication for it. I've tried a couple times where I remember I was sitting in corporate, and thank God I just became an entrepreneur instead. But I was sitting in corporate, I'm sitting in these meetings, I'm like going crazy listening to these boring meetings. I'm the only one that like can't help but crack a joke or fiddle my pen the entire time, and like no one takes me serious because I'm just like, this is the worst meeting on the planet. You know what I mean? Like, how are we having these every day? And I just couldn't do it. So I literally was like, I need to get medication. I have to be normal, like all these other people that can sit in here and just sit the whole time and listen. I'm like, something I couldn't do. And, it was like, here's this pill, and good luck. Come back in 6 weeks and, we'll see if you liked it, essentially. And then I came back, I was like, oh, I'm getting leg cramps and I don't feel like myself. And it was like, oh, we'll just switch to medication, and it was not a very pleasant experience. But I've had that with a lot of different things in my life, like hormonal issues, right? Where a doctor's talking about hormones, like they have any idea what they're actually talking about. I, at the time, knew more about hormones than they did, essentially. When it comes to mental health, what is a recommendation you have on finding, someone that can really support a person in their mental health journey, especially if they're afraid of, the system itself? Do you have any advice for people on, sourcing the right person for them, and ultimately trying to find a good solution?
Yeah, I think maybe two pieces of advice. The first one is sourcing the right person. I think in this day and age, not just Plumm, a couple of the platforms will give you that flexibility. Like, I mean, if you were to come to Plumm and we would triage you, and then we would say, okay, we would refer, okay, like maybe this therapist is the best suited for you because of your cultural background and the ADHD and anything else that you've shared. But then if you do a therapy session and for whatever reason you don't resonate, because ultimately, it's talk therapy, you also have to somehow feel that connection with the therapist and so on. So if for whatever reason you don't resonate, you have the opportunity now to get into a therapy session with another provider or another therapist and keep repeating that process. And then we can keep helping you find the right therapist. So that's one. So I think it's not just Plumm. Quite a few other platforms would do that. Maybe they would keep a cap or something, but yeah, I mean, some other platforms will also do that for you. I think that the environment has slightly changed where you're not really stuck to your 5-mile radius when you're trying to find a therapist. So that's one. So I encourage people to look at platforms like Plumm who give you that virtual flexibility. But secondly, I want to caveat that as well, because Jordan, your experience, you said, you never seek therapy and you had to do that hard work and you thankfully came out of that headspace. But that is the real reality of things. There's no therapist on this planet who can save you. Only you can save you. That is really, really important. So I think for me, a therapist, I think is a guide, you just talking out loud to another human being. I think that action in itself is therapeutic, and then obviously you listen to, also no therapist is going to tell you to do this or to do that. At least they shouldn't, they're there to contain the space for you and then to be your guide, essentially. Yeah. So really not being that, so the culture nuances. So you spoke about, that example, if you're a Filipino, different dialects, it'll be beneficial if I was connected to a Filipino with the same dialect, understands my cultural background, so on, just that I can connect a little bit faster. But really, you are doing the work. It's you, not the therapist, ultimately. So this is like with a pinch of salt or a caveat to, yes, you can go to platforms like Plumm and then endlessly see 50 different types of therapists. But you need to fix that problem. No therapist is going to fix your problem. You need to put in that hard work. You can't expect going to the gym and, your personal trainer making you have 6-pack abs. It's just not possible. Yeah. Like, it's the work that you do off the gym. It's the push that you do within the gym. It's you. That personal trainer is your guide. Fine. Some person you resonate with who's now become your buddy or whatever, but it's you doing that hard work.
Still to do really, the push-ups.
I think that, exactly. So I think that second advice is way bigger. So it's just like, if you've found that one person, and hopefully your therapeutic journey also should not be a lifelong journey. I feel essentially a good therapist would be somebody who quickly makes themselves go out of business with that client, if that makes sense, you know? Because I also see a lot of people using therapy as a crutch. And then that just becomes like okay, if I don't see my therapist for the next 8 years, then I cannot live my life. I really think, not every, so we all sit on a spectrum. And again, maybe a slight caveat to that. Maybe some people really need more help. Maybe some people need medication. Maybe some people need to go into that space. But for the most part, a lot of people, really need to start, taking action. Really telling yourself that this is a space where I'm just going to vocalize, and that is already a therapeutic exercise. You already feel, that the weight lifted off your shoulder, your chest, and so on. And then really taking the advice and then really taking that action. Because, at the max, at the most, you're going to have one therapy session in a week, at the most. Yep. And, mostly less than that. So what is happening between the therapy session is what's going to dictate how your life transforms, or it doesn't.
Yeah. The second piece, I want to double down on that for everyone listening. The second piece is definitely, in my opinion, the key. Obviously, having the tools and having the guidance and the space to be able to, make it past those initial pieces is going to be very, very important for a lot of people. Because a lot of people, I think, when they're in that headspace, they're feeling helpless because they have tried. They have tried to solve the problem and just haven't found what works, right? So I think there's a lot of tools that, therapists and coaches can provide to people, but you have to do the work at the end of the day. And, I found a book last year. It was called Letting Go. And just an incredible book. And it was essentially about letting go of, trapped emotions inside of your body. And, it was a book that really resonated. I'm pretty well read, in kind of the nonfiction, space. But this was one of those that I just was able to take with me day in and day out. But it did still require me every time I felt that emotion or that fear coming up in me. It was like I had to recognize it and just sit with it and feel it, but I had to sit there and feel it. I had to really process through it, which was something I had never done in my life. It was like just push it down and move on, just go, 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 go. Don't slow down. So that second piece to me is detrimental, and I think that's all aspects of life. In entrepreneurship, in my world, I got started in the high ticket coaching space, which was a lot of the Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi and, these guys. And there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there who are going to study and fill up their little notebook for years and years and years. And they're going to, come up with the perfect logo, and they're going to do this and that. And I'm assuming you didn't build Plumm by coming up with the perfect website first. And then, doing unlimited revisions of it until you had something that you're like, oh yeah, maybe we can publish this. So to me, it's kind of it's in business, it's in life, it's in mental health of, we have to take messy action to, do anything. And sometimes we're not going to know what that is. So, total pivot, ADHD moment. Where did the name Plumm come from?
Do you want the real answer or the Hollywood reply?
Both maybe.
Plumm actually wasn't called Plumm before. Like you talking about come up with the perfect logo. I mean, we were called Healing Clouds. It was completely different business, whatever. We just, Plumm could have been called Banana, like for all I care. Like, I mean, it was just, taking action. I think, Jordan, just bringing that home as so important. You could have all the ideas of the world, all the business plans and whatever. As soon as you start, that all goes down to shits anyway.
Yep.
So just don't waste your time. Like execute and then learn as you go. Plumm, so we were called Healing Clouds. And it was just because, I don't know, healing in the clouds. It was very airy-fairy. We moved into the workplace, and people are like, man, like, we've got men in our company, and if you want men to use this platform, like they're not going to use Healing Clouds. So we're like, oh shit, okay. So there are a few things I was thinking about. I'm like, okay, I want one word rather than two, and it should be short so it's memorable. And then I was like, okay, I wanted to name it behind a fruit, because when you look at a lot of large companies like Apple, Orange Telecom, Mango, the retailer, like all these big names are, off the back of fruit names. So I'm like, okay, fruit name would be nice. So, and then I'm like, okay, which fruit helps you lower anxiety and stress? That happens to be plum. If you eat plum, it helps you lower your anxiety and stress. And then, in the true startup spirit, because the domain Plumm with a single M wasn't available, I just added another M to it.
Yeah.
So it became Plumm with two M's.
Amazing. That's really cool. I want to say something. So, for the entrepreneurs listening to this and the people starting businesses, there was two things that you just said, which was, it's all going to go to shit anyways, which I love that. Like, that's a quote to me almost, which is like, you can have the best plan. You can have, the perfect outcome. And that book actually helps me a lot, the Letting Go book, because I always had to have some control over a lot of stuff in my life. And I think it's because of the things I had, the adversities that I had been through. And, I was trying to control a lot of stuff. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it doesn't. Like we're humans. We don't get to control many things in life. And I think what you just said is so good. Like, you want to launch that business, like go for it. But remember, it's going to all go to shit. You can almost plan on that. It's like 99% of the time, that's what's going to happen. And then you have the opportunity to go fix it. So I love that. And then, I also was laughing about the name, cause it's like, hey, like, you probably thought that was a really cool name at the time. And then you realize that maybe it wasn't as cool of a name for your use case. as you had thought. And that's where, if you spend all the time trying to pick the perfect business name, you're probably going to have to change it anyways if you have any, relative success. So that's amazing. If you were to leave, I know we're coming up, we're actually a little over on time. That is my bad. If you were to leave the audience with maybe a quote that you love, maybe something that's got you through tough times, maybe something, an exercise that you share with yourself, what would that be that you could leave with the audience? Doesn't have to be super profound if nothing
Yeah,
pops straight
yeah.
into
I
your
mean,
mind. But
I can't really think of a quote on top of my head, but I mean something that I usually tell a lot of people, because I mean, depending, the type of listeners, but I mean, if it's people trying to achieve success in any shape, way, or form, not necessarily starting a business. For me, I think, because a lot of people ask me this question, because I mean, maybe slight anomaly, the way I came to the UK and then what I've been able to create off the back of it. So a lot of people ask me, so how? I think for me, success is pretty simple. I think there are just three ingredients: mindset, hard work, consistency. I truly believe the game of life is rigged in your favor. Really, like I mean, the universe is conspiring for you to succeed. If
mm,
you just change your mindset and you work hard consistently, you will win. The success is actually very simple. If you just have those three, mindset, and I start with mindset because mindset is the hardest. So
yep,
life is all about perspective. It's really your perspective on life. And my perspective is the universe is, the game of life is rigged in my favor. The universe is just conspiring for me to win. So that is my mindset. And then hard work, because when I moved to this country, I remember the first couple of weeks I was actually with my co-founder, who's still my co-founder, and then we were in this accelerator, NatWest accelerator. NatWest is a big bank in the UK.
yep,
And I think it was a cohort of roughly about 40 odd startups, founders, co-founders. I think it was about maybe around 10 p.m. And I asked him a question. I said, how many people do you see around you? And he got confused. He started looking around. He got confused. He's like, no one. I'm like, yes, exactly that. We don't have the education system. We don't have the support system. We don't have the money. We don't even have bloody visas to be in this country. But the one thing that we will have is that we will outwork everyone.
yep.
Nobody should be able to work as hard as us. If you're able to do that with me consistently over a period of time, we will win. So, yeah, I mean, for me, I've just applied that because I really have nothing else. And off the back of that, success, I think, like I said, input equals output. If you just do that,
Yeah.
you will win. There's no two ways about it. So,
I love that. You said conspiring for you to win. The world is conspiring, for you to win. And what a cool like outcome or way to look at life, because a lot of us, I think, are the complete opposite, and even
yeah.
when we're trying to convince ourselves like, oh no, like if I work really hard I can make it happen, but then you're almost telling yourself like, but the world keeps putting these things in my way.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer, like, those things were put there on purpose, 100%. Like you were the cause of that, good or bad, and that was put there for you to learn some type of lesson. And if you're not taking away a lesson from it, then you know what I mean, then you're just missing these, golden nuggets of your life, and it makes those things a little bittersweet sometimes, but like great at the, because it's like, man, that really, really sucked. I don't want that to happen again, but man, did I learn, it was like a couple weeks ago, I burned like 20 grand in ad spend, right? I'm just like, and I was like, oh, that was like, that sucked. But hey, I know what not to do now. It's like very
Exactly.
clear, like, don't run that type of campaign again,
Exactly.
So I love that. Amazing. I had one other question and I totally spaced it. But what was it? It was messy action, conspiring for you to win. Um your ingredient for success. I can't remember, but such good stuff. And yeah. So we'll leave it at that, Asim. I really appreciate you coming on the
Thank you.
podcast, for sharing, about your background. And for people listening right now that maybe are struggling with mental health, we'll leave some resources down in the comments below, or the description below for you guys. We'll leave Plumm there as well if you're a workplace looking for an HR system that prioritizes mental health for your employees. And we'll leave Asim's details down there as well. I believe you're pretty active on LinkedIn. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, I am.
Perfect.
Yes. So if anyone wants to reach out to me, by all means, just drop me a DM. I'll be more
Okay,
than happy to
perfect.
help.
Cool. So we'll leave that information down there. And yeah, thank you, Plumm. And then Asim, I have a couple intros I want to make for you in this specific space that I think could be really beneficial for you, or you for them, specifically
Amazing.
with the mental health apps and AI and other things. So, but with that, thank you for listening to another episode of the AI Operator podcast. And thank you for being on the show today. We'll see you on the other side.
Thank you for having me.